Hi there. Putin is really telling it how it is. He calls the US a parasite. I was watching a video on Al Jazeera interview between a guy representing Peter Schiff and a woman called Karen Young of Dubai University. And it was an interesting interaction because the guy representing Peter Schiff said, well, US is printing money and it's artificially keeping interest rates low. It's buying back its treasuries. And she says, well, it's not a problem buying back the treasuries. China buys 26% of the treasuries. The US buys 75% of its own treasuries. That's a nice balance, she said. But what she really, that really shows you what's going on here. There's two camps, the Peter Schiff camp that really wants to have kind of fair trade and fair interaction with money being kind of a reliable nature, not being an instrument in itself. And there's another camp that says, well, money can be created as long as you have a guarantee that you get the oil. And as you do that, as you take the oil and you create the money to distribute it, it doesn't really matter whether US creates the money and buys its own treasuries or China buys its own treasuries. It's not about the debt at all, because you know that you're creating money against an asset that you're going to burn, and that the debt is going to be irredeemable. There's nothing to sell in order to get money from somebody else to buy the debt. Those are the two philosophies. And of course, it is parasitic to on the world to be constantly creating power in a way, and a way to convince people to pass with their, or to part with their labor, the products of what they produce, in return for the energy that is essentially stolen from the Middle East. But both don't have a solution, and I think both are intrinsically positively motivated. So Peter Schiff's kind of approach is that there should be a real economy with a fair exchange of value. Of course, it really depends on what resources you have in your territory, and as long as you're using fossil fuels to do that, there can be huge imbalances. But like say if his method of doing things would actually happen, the Middle East would be owning everything in the world. They would be the owners of the world, because they have basically provided the energy to create most of it. Not only the Middle East, but the big oil suppliers. So he should, if he wants to have a balanced, fair distribution of labor and trade and production around the world, he should be a proponent of renewable energies and the basically cheap distribution of renewable energy sources around the world, so that no place becomes a monopoly holder or a power hub for renewable energies. Because if that happens, let's say if the US starts making all the windmills in the world, it becomes the most powerful windmill manufacturer. It can suppress windmill manufacturing anywhere else and be cheap in every aspect. Then, of course, it would also be the owner of the energy companies that have the windmills, and it would also be owner of the banks that channel the money in order to distribute the windmill energy. That would not be a balanced world of Peter Schiff. So he has to acknowledge renewables, he has to go against climate change very strongly. And I don't think he's really doing that, because he, at the same time, wants to use oil money. And he's also not acknowledging that debt is meaningless, that it doesn't mean anything, that it is burnt oil. So he's not, I think, the optimal thinker. But the woman, of course, that says that it doesn't really matter whether the US buys the treasuries or China, is also not optimal, because she is expressly not acknowledging the depletion of fossil fuels. And of course you can switch to coal after that, but you are also depleting the ecosystem and making it completely impossible to live on this planet. Plus that, although it is a positive intention to give everybody the same amount of wealth and distribute it evenly, and if you take that consideration as the driving motivator behind corporatism and huge companies, because it's cheaper to produce on a large scale, so actually you can serve more people with more wealth, with less energy, if you base everything on fossil fuels, on centralized energy. If you take that benign aspect, or that benign intention, then you can understand why you would produce stuff in poorer countries, because you only have to pay a worker in India very little to have this Indian low-wage lifestyle, which is not very energy intensive, to produce the goods in the West and create all the cash flow. And so there's a huge amount of people sitting on their ass, enjoying the fact that it's organized like this. That is also, of course, a mistaken strategy, because it is, eventually it will not last. It is not efficient, and it is not achievable. You cannot satisfy the desires of people. There's many examples in world history that if you kind of basically give the people the idea that they can get whatever they want, as long as they work hard enough for it or are smart enough, you will destroy the planet. Because the needs of people, of individuals, are not related to their actual needs. There are hedges against future risk, against future poverty, against future depletion of resources. People don't take what they need, they take what they can get. And they always want more. So that strategy, that oil-based strategy of trying to maximize the wealth around the world, and of course having a preference for certain people over others, but let's say more or less everybody's trying to achieve that. You see Indian people saying, well, there's a booming market here for IT now because we're taking all the IT jobs from the US, and they're just maximizing their own wealth. Both strategies of Peter Schiff and of the oil revenue or the oil credit system believers are not a model for success. And I think that's the problem, because then you have nobody in the world, and there's no big bloc that is going to advocate a real solution for to how to live well, how to have general wealth. We do have a lot of it, of course. We cannot really deny the fact that, for instance, Holland is a very wealthy country and very luxurious, and we have a lot of stuff, but it's all based on the oil credit system, which is not going to last. And the transition is still very hard. I believe that the best strategy would be to increase ownership of everything and give everything to anything else but financial institutions or banks. So basically there can be no bank with a mortgage on a house. There can be people with mortgages on houses, and then it's a matter of trust between two people. Like, are you going to work for me? Do you have a good job? There's really no reason why a person cannot give a mortgage to another person, as long as you make it a little bit more democratic and mixed up, just like a jury trial would be in the US. Then 10 people can always review a mortgage application of another person and say, well, okay, so this guy is going to earn $60,000 a year and he's going to be able to pay back the mortgage, if you need to. But anyway, there's so many sides to that. I think the whole world should be with much less ownership in other hands. And as soon as that happens, you get much more productive capacity locally, because it becomes more interesting and cheaper to do so, and you have less overhead. And gradually, let's say from a governmental perspective, if I was a government and I would have to kind of try to push wealth in society, I would expressly give credit or supply local producers with renewable energies in order to produce whatever they are producing. And that is the nice thing about that, is that it's a distributed effort, so it can happen in parallel across the world. It creates jobs, and it creates free production. It creates cost-free, or production with much reduced cost. And I would really not respect the ownership of JP Morgan of the copper reserves. No. I would simply try to look for people that can usefully, can bring that copper into a use where it generates wealth, which would primarily be in energy generation, and then maybe in medical equipment, in other equipment. So that would be real economics, in my opinion. And it's also, in a way, a variant of war economics, Because in a war, you know, you can say, well, we have 1 million bicycles, but if we melt them, we can have 50 guns or something like that, or 100,000 guns. And then we can win the war and we can go on with our lives again. So, you know, you start to look at utility of things much more specifically, much more detailed. And that's just not going on right now, because the rent seekers are in charge. And Max Kaiser is commenting on it and say, well, Wall Street, of course, is having everything that they want. They're going to have huge fees if the US is going to be junk status, and there's going to be all these changes around the world. Just push it a little here, push it a little there. Things start moving, and as they're moving, you can do whatever you want. You know, if there's a panic and there's a fire in a big building, you can grasp whoever you want and rape them. Just like this is I try to make a variation on Superman that, you know, catches a woman that falls from a building and then, you know, have sex with her and then puts her on the ground, and then she shouts, you raped me, and nobody believes her, of course. You know, you can do whatever you want if people are panicking. So as long as you're safe and you can make people panic, you're gonna have a ball. And I'm afraid that that's going on. And it's really amazing how you, there was this guy, these teachers, they're just walking around saying, well, yes, but we have to fight, save the teachers. Save the teachers. No, don't save the teachers. Just reorganize the teachers. Make sure that they're in different business models, that they're not working for schools with a profit motive, that they're not working for any other organization, that they simply are on their own. They're teachers and they have their own company, one big corporation, the Teacher Corporation of US, and they set their own standards. And if you want to engineer, then you have to meet the needs of the whole trajectory from kindergarten to university, in combination or in discussion with these teachers, this teacher corporation. Because otherwise you simply don't have the skilled people to run your company anymore, and you won't get them. See, maybe that's a different attitude. Never, it's like save the whale. Don't save the whale, destroy the whale ship. Don't save the forest, plant forest. That's the weak. That's the weak. That's the, let's say, the loser side of the whole proposition. If you have to save something, you're not aggressive enough. But thanks for listening.